What happens when two of the most outspoken women in American media sit across from each other on live TV, armed with decades of arguments, grudges, rival philosophies, and absolutely no intention of backing down? What happens when Joy Behar, who has never learned the meaning of the word soft, faces Jane Fonda, who has spent her entire life refusing to be silenced? What happens is tension. Pure, live, unfiltered tension. The View's studio didn't buzz the way it normally did that morning. It vibrated, quietly, tightly, like a wire pulled so hard it was one note away from snapping. Camera operators whispered, producers hovered, audience members leaned forward without realizing it. Something was coming, and the two women who felt it the most were standing on opposite sides of the stage, staring each other down without actually looking at each other. Jane Fonda adjusted her blazer with a serene confidence that wasn't confidence at all. It was armor. Her eyes were still, calculating, already turning every possible question into a battle plan. Joy Behar rolled her shoulders once, the way she always did before stepping into a conversation she knew would get heated. She gripped her knot cards so tightly the edges began to bend. Behind her, Whoopi Goldberg exhaled slowly, the sigh of someone who knew, absolutely knew, that she was about to spend the next hour refereeing a firestorm. Sunny Hostin glanced at her cards but didn't read a single line. She could feel the charge in the air. High voltage, raw. Alyssa Farah Griffin typed into her phone, missing everything, but she would feel it soon enough. 30 seconds, the floor manager shouted. Jane stepped toward the table with that actress-perfect smile. Joy didn't move. Their eyes met. There it was, the spark, the fracture line, the quiet promise of war. Good morning, Joy, Jane said softly. Joy didn't return the smile. Let's see. Just 2 words, and yet the temperature of the room dropped by 10 degrees. The theme music hit, applause thundered, and The View went live. The Open. Whoopi delivered her usual opener, but there was a stiffness to her tone, as if even she couldn't pretend the energy on set was normal. And joining us today, the one and only Jane Fonda, thunderous applause, a standing ovation from several audience members. Jane nodded graciously. Joy didn't clap. When the applause settled, Whoopi gestured warmly. Jane, you've got a lot going on. New documentary, new initiatives, new fire in your activism, as always. Jane laughed politely, but she kept glancing at Joy. She felt it. She knew Joy was coiled. Sunny jumped in. There's a whole generation of young women discovering your work for the first time. Your activism, your films, But Joy cut her off. Yeah, there's definitely a whole generation discovering things, she said, her tone sharp enough to slice straight through Sunny's sentence. Especially things some of us were told we should forget. The table stiffened. Jane's smile faltered. Whoopi closed her eyes for 1 second. Here we go, she thought. Already. Jane folded her hands. Joy, if there's something you want to say it. Oh, I plan to, Joy said. A murmur rippled through the audience. Jane leaned back slightly. Not intimidated, bracing. The first strike, Joy set down her cards. No notes, no script, just instinct and history. Let's talk about your activism, she said, because a lot of people admire what you do now. I admire some of it, but some of us remember earlier chapters too. Jane exhaled through her nose. There it was, the first crack. Joy, Whoopi warned. No, Whoopi, Jane said calmly, lifting a hand. Let her. If she wants to go there, we can go there. Joy blinked once. Great. Let's. Sunny's eyes darted between them like she was watching a truck drift into oncoming traffic. Alyssa finally put her phone down. The audience leaned forward. Joy continued. You've spent years talking about justice and accountability. Fine. But some of us think accountability goes both ways. Jane's jaw tightened. And I've spent years addressing my past, Joy. Addressing, sure, Joy said. But you've also spent years acting like everyone who still remembers it is overreacting. A sharp inhale swept through the studio. Jane's voice went low. Are you suggesting I haven't taken responsibility? I'm suggesting, Joy said, that you get very uncomfortable when people bring up the parts of your activism you'd rather edit out of the highlight reel. Jane stared at her. Really stared at her. Whoopi sat up. Sunny held her breath. Alyssa froze. Jane folded her arms slowly. Joy, if you're implying what I think you're implying— Oh, I'm not implying, Joy said. I'm saying it. A beat. Silence thick enough to chew. Whoopi cut in. Ladies! But it was too late. The counterattack. Jane leaned forward, her eyes focused and unblinking. I didn't come here to be ambushed, she said quietly. Not by you, not by anyone. Ambushed? Joy scoffed. You've survived worse than my questions. That's not the point, Jane snapped. The point is, you don't get to hold me hostage to mistakes I've spent decades atoning for, just because you're in the mood to throw punches. Audience. Ooh! Joy's lips curled. Oh, don't worry, Jane. I'm always in the mood. Sunny whispered, Oh my God. Jane shook her head slowly. This is exactly why people stop having difficult conversations on TV. Because someone always turns it into a spectacle. Joy fired back instantly. You know what I think? I think you've gotten so used to praise for all the good you do, now that you can't handle when someone brings up the parts you'd rather bury. Jane slammed her palm lightly against the table. Not hard, but enough to echo. Stop acting like you know my motives. Stop acting like you're above criticism. I'm not above anything, Jane shot back, but I'm not here to be lectured by someone who didn't live my life, didn't walk my path, and doesn't get to rewrite my intentions. Her voice cracked, not from weakness, but from sheer force. Audience gasped. Cameras zoomed in instinctively. Producers watched from behind the glass, mouths open. Whoopi tried again. Ladies, we can talk about this without trying to— Whoopi, please, Jane said, eyes still locked on Joy. Let her and I finish this. Joy leaned in, elbows on the table, face inches from Jane's. You want honesty? Fine. I think you've spent so long trying to redeem your past that you've convinced yourself everyone who brings it up is attacking you. Jane's nostrils flared. And I think, she replied slowly, that you've spent so long being the one who gets to interrogate people that you've forgotten how to have a conversation without turning it into a courtroom. A few audience members applauded, others gasped. Joy looked around. Oh, don't encourage her. Jane sat up straighter. You want to talk accountability? I've lived my consequence. I've faced my critics. And yet somehow you, after all these years, still think you get to sit in judgment. Joy's voice dropped to a razor-thin whisper. Someone has to. That line, that quiet, chilling line, hit the table like a gavel. Jane's expression changed instantly. Not anger, something colder. Like she had just been dared, and she accepted the dare. The tension spikes. Joy, Jane said, I came here to talk about my work, not to be cross-examined. Joy lifted her brows. And I came here to do my job. Jane leaned in again. And your job, at least today, is to host, not prosecute. Joy's mouth twitched. That depends entirely on the guest. Jane stood up slightly, just a few inches out of her chair before she caught herself. Whoopi grabbed her arm. Jane, hey! But Jane wasn't looking at Whoopi. She was staring straight into Joy's eyes. You don't intimidate me, she said quietly. Joy smiled a slow, deliberate smile. I'm not trying to. A beat, a silent electric beat. Sunny whispered, Are they serious right now? Alyssa swallowed hard. This is going to go viral. Whoopi rubbed both hands over her face. I hate all of you right now. The moment before implosion, Joy turned to the camera. So, Jane, Let's talk about the documentary. No, Jane said sharply, cutting her off. Everyone froze. No, Joy repeated. Jane shook her head. Not until we finish this. Sonny's eyes widened. Oh no, Jane continued, her voice firm, unwavering. I'm not letting you pivot away from this moment just because it's getting uncomfortable. Joy barked a single laugh. Uncomfortable? Jane, this show lives in uncomfortable. Jane pointed at her. Not like this. And why not? Joy shot back. Because you can control every interview except mine. And that line was the trigger. The air changed. The temperature spiked. Something in Jane's expression snapped into place. I'm done, she said. Joy blinked. What? I said I'm done. Jane pushed her chair back. Slowly, decisively. The audience gasped. Producers scrambled. Whoopi stood halfway up. Jane, wait! But Jane wasn't listening. She locked eyes with Joy one last time. You wanted a fight. Congratulations. She stood. The room erupted in shock. Joy stared at her, stunned but defiant. Sonny whispered, She's actually leaving. But Jane wasn't leaving. Not yet. She stepped toward the edge of the table, leaned in close to Joy and said, under her breath but caught by every nearby microphone, You don't get to define me. Not now. Not ever. Joy didn't move. Jane straightened her blazer, turned toward the cameras. The studio fell into a silence so sharp it felt surgical. Jane stood there, not quite walking away, not quite sitting back down, caught in a gravity she didn't intend to create but now fully owned. Joy didn't blink. She watched Jane the way a storm watches the horizon, waiting for the next flash but daring it to strike. Jane, Whoopi said softly, this isn't the way. But Jane raised a hand without looking at her. I'm not finished. Joy leaned back in her chair, arms folded. You sure about that? Because it looks like you're halfway out the door. The comment hit harder than Joy probably meant it to. Or maybe she meant every syllable. With Joy, the line was always blurry. Jane inhaled through her nose, steady but tense. If I walk out, it won't be because you rattled me. It'll be because I refuse to participate in a circus. Joy smirked. Oh, honey, this isn't a circus. This is daytime TV. Entirely different animal. The audience laughed nervously, unsure if they were supposed to. Sonny shot them a look that made the laughter die off instantly. Jane stepped back toward the table, lowering herself into her seat with a deliberate slowness, as if reclaiming territory. Joy didn't look impressed. The other hosts exchanged glances like people ducking before the next explosion. Whoopi cleared her throat. Okay, why don't we, Don't moderate this, Jane said, eyes fixed on Joy. Don't tell her how to do her job, Joy snapped back instantly. And there it was again, that invisible collision. Two wills smashing into each other with no sign of fatigue. Jane clasped her hands on the table. If we're going to talk about my past, then let's talk about the whole truth, not the cherry-picked pieces that suit your argument. Joy shrugged. I'm listening. You're not, Jane fired back. You're waiting to pounce. Joy opened her mouth, but Jane didn't let her. I've faced rooms tougher than this. Presidents, generals, crowds who wanted me dead. Do you think this table scares me? Joy rolled her eyes. You're the one who almost walked out. Jane's voice hardened. Because I can choose not to be disrespected. And I can choose not to sugarcoat, Joy said, especially when someone pretends they've moved past something while still dodging the uncomfortable parts. Jane leaned in. I haven't dodged anything. I've confronted more about my past than you ever have about yours. Joy blinked. Excuse me, Sonny whispered. Oh no, Alyssa mouthed. What is happening? Whoopi gently tapped the table. Ladies. But the table had its own momentum now. Nothing was slowing it. Jane nodded slowly, her voice quiet but sharp. You're very good at challenging other people's accountability, Joy, but you're terrible at acknowledging your own blind spots. Joy's expression froze. Not hurt, not angry, just still. Like what? Joy asked, nearly whispering. You attack people for evolving, Jane said. Because if you admit they've changed, then you have to acknowledge you might be wrong about them. And that's something you don't seem willing to do. Joy let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. You know what's funny, Jane? You've spent years talking about growth, redemption, turning your life around. But the second someone questions the parts you don't like, suddenly you're the victim. Jane shook her head. I'm not your victim, and I'm not your villain. Then stop acting like it, Joy said. The audience murmured again. It was impossible to tell if they were Team Joy or Team Jane. The room was too charged for sides. Jane's fingers tapped the table. Once, twice. A tiny tell that she was holding something in. Something bigger. Something sharper. I didn't come here to fight with you, she said. Joy shrugged. But you came here knowing I would ask questions you don't want asked. I came here thinking you'd be fair. Joy leaned back. I am fair. I'm just not flattering. Jane's laugh was sudden and humorless. Fair. Joy, fairness would mean letting me speak. You decided the shape of this conversation before I even sat down. Joy's jaw tightened. Because I know how these interviews go. You charm, you pivot, you spin, and no one pushes back. Jane tilted her head. So you're the pushback. I'm the reality check, Joy said. Jane stared at her for several seconds, studying her like a puzzle she intended to solve. Then softly, you enjoy this. Joy didn't deny it. I enjoy honesty. No, Jane said. You enjoy being the one who gets the last word. You enjoy the heat. You like seeing how far someone will bend before they break. Joy's silence was the closest thing to confirmation. Sunny, finally unable to hold it in, leaned toward them. Okay, can we please just get to the actual conversation we planned? There are important issues. Joy cut her off with a raised hand. Not now, Sunny. Sunny's eyebrows shot up. Whoopi winced. Alyssa whispered. Oh my God. Jane's expression sharpened even further. You're proving my point, Joy. You want control. I want clarity, Joy corrected. And sometimes that means asking tough questions. Then ask them, Jane said, spreading her hands. But don't pretend your tough questions aren't wrapped in your own bias. Joy nodded slowly. Fine. You want a question? Here's one. A hush swept through the room. Joy leaned in, voice low. Do you really believe people have forgiven you? Or do you just hope they've forgotten? Jane's eyes widened, not with shock, with fury. That, Jane said, is a cruel question. It's an honest one, Joy replied. Jane's chair scraped as she stood up half an inch, but she caught herself. She pressed her palms flat against the table. You think you're cutting through ego, Jane said, but what you're actually doing is poking at wounds that are decades old just to watch someone bleed. Joy fired back instantly. If the wounds are still open, that's not my fault. Jane stared at her, hard, long. Then she said something that made everyone at the table go still. You don't want the truth, Joy. You want the moment. Joy blinked. What? You want the clip, Jane said. The viral moment, the confrontation, the fireworks. You want to be the one people talk about tomorrow. Joy didn't answer. Jane continued. You accuse me of rewriting history, but you're rewriting this interview to make yourself the hero. And I won't play that role for you. Joy's voice dropped to a whisper. Then leave. It wasn't said angrily. It wasn't said loudly, but it landed like a punch. Jane didn't move. The audience went breathless. Sunny covered her mouth. Whoopi's eyes widened, then narrowed, then closed again. Alyssa whispered, Holy! Jane finally replied, but her voice was so controlled it almost shook. If I walk out, you'll think you won. Joy whispered back, If you stay, you'll have to answer me. Jane's eyes didn't waver, and then, slowly, she sat back down. Not surrendering, not backing down, choosing the battlefield. Joy swallowed. Jane straightened her blazer. The studio braced itself, because the quiet between them wasn't calm. It was the eye of something still forming, something bigger, something neither one of them intended. But both were now fully committed to seeing through. The quiet after the storm wasn't peace. It was pressure, thick, humming, like the studio itself was waiting to see who would draw the next line in the sand. Jane sat rigid, eyes forward, jaw set. Joy remained still, arms folded, gaze locked onto Jane with the unwavering focus of someone who had been in 100 battles and wasn't afraid of one more. Whoopi looked between them, her face a map of stress lines. Okay, she said slowly. We can reset. Let's just take a breath. But neither woman breathed. Sunny finally spoke. Jane, no one wants to ambush you. We're just... Jane held up a hand. Sunny, I respect you. This isn't about you. Sunny leaned back, relieved to be spared but still tense. Joy spoke next. You know what I think, Jane? Jane didn't turn her head. Oh, I can guess. You walk into this studio expecting a tribute. Jane's head snapped toward her. I expect respect. Joy shrugged. Those aren't the same thing. Jane's voice dropped. They are when someone has lived the kind of life I have. Joy leaned forward. See? This is what I mean. You want to talk about accountability, but when you're actually held to it, Jane interrupted, sharp as a blade. By you. Joy didn't flinch. Yes, by me. A murmur rippled through the audience. The tension wasn't rising anymore. It was tightening, coiling, becoming something volatile. Alyssa whispered to Sunny, This is unreal. Sunny whispered back, I know. Jane rested her elbows on the table and steepled her fingers. Let me explain something to you, Joy. Joy lifted an eyebrow. By all means. I have spent decades confronting my past, alone, publicly, repeatedly. Not because I wanted applause, not because I wanted forgiveness, but because I wanted to be better, for myself, for the people I hurt, for the movements I believe in. Joy's expression softened for a half second, but only half. Jane continued, You come at me like I've been hiding, like I've been dodging, like I've been pretending I'm perfect. I'm not. I never claimed to be. Joy's voice was quiet. But you act like criticism is beneath you. Jane leaned in close. No, I act like cheap shots are beneath me. Joy inhaled sharply. The audience reacted audibly this time. Gasps, whispers, shifting seats. Whoopi rubbed her temples. Oh, Jesus. Here we go. Joy spoke with restrained intensity. You're calling me cheap? Jane didn't blink. I'm calling your tactics cheap. Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Jane beat her to it. You're not holding me accountable. You're performing. Joy froze, not because she didn't have a comeback, but because she had too many. Sunny jumped in, desperate to cool the flames. Let's just... Joy waved her off. No, let her finish. Jane exhaled. You are brilliant at asking hard questions, Joy. Truly, you push people. You challenge them. But you also enjoy the power of it. And sometimes you forget that the people you push are still human. Joy stared at her, eyes narrowing. And you forget that the people we interview aren't here to be worshipped? Jane shook her head slowly. I didn't ask to be worshipped. I asked for fairness. Joy snapped back. Maybe fairness looks different from the other side of the table. Jane tilted her head. Does it? Joy didn't answer, not out of silence, but out of calculation. Jane watched her carefully. Say what you want to say. Joy leaned in. Fine, I will. Whoopi mouthed. Oh boy. Joy's tone dropped into something cool, you think. Joy didn't look away. I think people deserve honesty, even when it hurts. Jane nodded slowly. Then let me give you honesty. And suddenly the entire studio was silent again, for trying to be better. Her voice cracked just once, but it was enough. The audience felt it. The hosts felt it. Even Joy felt it. But Joy wasn't done. Trying, she said quietly, isn't the same as succeeding. Jane stared at her, a long, tense, suffocating stare. Then she pushed her chair back, slowly, deliberately, a movement with intention. Whoopi reached for her arm. Jane, don't. But Jane shook her head. No, I'm done talking to someone who refuses to listen. Joy sat up straighter. Don't put this on me. You're walking away because you don't like the questions. Jane turned toward her, eyes blazing. I'm walking away because you're not asking questions. You're settling scores. Joy stood up halfway. I don't have a score with you. Jane smiled coldly. Then why does this feel personal? Joy didn't answer. Jane took a step back. A producer signaled frantically for commercial. Cameras adjusted. Audience murmured. Joy finally said, because integrity matters to me. Jane froze mid-step. Then she turned around fully. You think I don't have integrity? Joy hesitated, and that hesitation was deadly. Jane stepped closer, not aggressively, but with purpose. Say it, Jane whispered. Joy's voice trembled. I think you lost it once. Jane nodded. Yes, I did. Joy blinked. Jane's voice softened. But I got it back, piece by piece, year by year, and I will not let you pretend I haven't spent my entire adult life trying. Joy opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Jane took a breath, then another. She looked at the hosts, the audience, the cameras, and finally at Joy. I am done here. She turned toward the edge of the stage. Joy whispered, barely audible, Jane. Jane didn't stop. Whoopi called after her, Jane, wait. But she kept walking. Sunny stood halfway up. Maybe someone should... Alyssa shook her head. There's no stopping her now. The audience watched in stunned silence as Jane Fonda stepped off the platform and disappeared behind the stage curtain, her silhouette shrinking with every step. Joy remained standing at the table, eyes fixed on the space Jane had occupied moments before. And in that frozen, breathless moment, Joy Behar realized something she had never expected. She hadn't won. She had pushed too far, and the fallout had only just begun. Chaos didn't erupt immediately. It seeped in, quiet and disbelieving, as though everyone on the Today Show set were trying to convince themselves they hadn't just watched one of the most familiar faces in daytime television walk out mid-segment. The director's voice crackled in the control room, sharp and panicked. Cut to commercial! Cut to commercial now! But it was too late. The feed had already dipped to black. A second too long, a hesitation visible to millions of viewers at home. In the studio, the lights dimmed slightly, reducing the harsh glare on Hoda's face. She sat frozen for a moment, fingers still curled around her mug, shoulders tight, jaw set. Not angry, but overwhelmed. A producer rushed toward her. Are you okay? The woman asked, gently placing a hand on Hoda's shoulder. Hoda exhaled shakily, rubbing her forehead. I didn't think it would go that way. Her voice was soft, tinged with regret. I wasn't trying to upset her. Another producer, younger, frazzled, came storming over, waving a tablet. The clip is already trending. We need to get ahead of this. Hoda looked up, her brows tightening. It just happened. And that's how fast it moves, the producer replied, tapping the screen. People are posting it. It's everywhere. Hoda closed her eyes, inhaling. I need to talk to her. You can't right now, someone else interjected. She's in the back room. She asked for space. Hoda's face fell with genuine concern. Meanwhile, down a dim hallway past the bustling control room, Valerie Bertinelli sat alone in a small guest lounge, an isolated space usually meant for final touch-ups or brief moments of pre-show calm. Now it felt like a bunker. She had ripped the mic pack off as soon as she exited the set, tossing it onto the sofa with trembling hands. Her breathing was uneven, chest rising and falling in short, frustrated motions. A makeup artist peeked in hesitantly. Valerie, do you need water? Or, no, Valerie said, softer than before but still raw. Thank you. The makeup artist nodded and retreated. Valerie pressed her fingers to her temples. She could still feel the bright studio lights burning behind her eyelids. The questioning, the accusations between the lines, the sense of exposure. She whispered to herself, why did it hit me so hard? Why now? Her throat tightened. She knew the answer. It wasn't the questions themselves. It was that she had walked onto that set expecting compassion and instead felt evaluated, observed, dissected like a case study. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. A different producer approached the lounge door, knocked gently. Valerie, can I come in? Please, not now. It's just, we want to make sure you're okay. She hesitated, then nodded. Fine. The producer, a man in his 40s with a calm, measured energy, stepped inside slowly. I'm not here to push you, just to check in. I know, Valerie muttered, eyes fixed on the floor. He sat across from her. You've been on this show dozens of times. You know we love having you. Valerie's eyes glistened. I didn't feel that out there, he sighed. Hoda cares about you. She blindsided me. She didn't mean to. That doesn't erase how it felt, Valerie said, her voice cracking again. The producer folded his hands. I get it, but we're live. Things get messy, and viewers will demand a statement. Valerie bristled at that. So I have to apologize for reacting to being pushed too far? No, he said quickly. Not apologize, just clarify. Tell people you're okay, that the show is okay. She let out a humorless laugh. Is it? He hesitated. It can be. Valerie grew quiet, staring at the wall where the show's logo glowed faintly from a distant monitor. I didn't sign up for a confrontation, she finally whispered. I came to talk about hope, healing, growth, not re-traumatize myself. The producer nodded with genuine empathy. Let me talk to Hoda, then we'll figure it out. He stood, leaving her again in heavy silence. Back on the main set, the crew prepared to return from commercial break. Hoda sat upright, but the warmth in her demeanor wavered. She was wrestling with her own thoughts. What she said, what she meant, what she didn't mean to imply. A co-host leaned in. You sure you want to finish this hour? Yes, Hoda said firmly, though her voice trembled. I won't hide because something went wrong. But this wasn't just something, the co-host replied gently. It was intense. I know. Hoda's eyes softened with worry. I care about Valerie. I never wanted to hurt her. The director's voice echoed across the studio. 30 seconds. Hoda inhaled, centering herself. When the show returned, the camera framed her in a tight medium shot. The audience had been instructed to remain calm, neutral, but the air buzzed with the weight of what had happened. Welcome back, Hoda began, her tone